Welcome back, Prime Timers. It's Dominic from the Primetime Treasure eBay store and YouTube channel. Thanks for coming by to check out another video. This is my favorite type of video that I do every month. It's the What Sold on eBay video, where I cover the top 10 most expensive and most profitable items that sold at the Primetime Treasure eBay store. And we're going to cover the month of October 2018 here. As I go through the items, I will share a few tips and tricks with you along the way. Be ready for that. In addition, just so you know, a lot of these items are ones that I feature at my Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center, as Be on the Lookout items of the day, also known as BOLOs, B-O-L-O, if you're new into reselling. So just go to the Facebook group, join. The link is down below, and you will then be able to search within the group. Just type in BOLO and the item. And the cool thing about it is that if I source the item at a garage sale or an estate sale or a rummage sale or somewhere like that, I actually will put a link to it where you could find the video where I actually sourced it. Now, not all of these are items that I have on video, but some of them are, and so you could go see that if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the sourcing. So let's jump into the first item right here. This is a vintage 5-inch brass alarm bell. If you're new into reselling, you may not be aware that there is a strong collector's market out there for brass bells, especially ones that look like this and that are pull-down alarm bells. So essentially, you pull down this string and the lever right there just causes a collision there, and the bell makes this really loud noise. I actually demonstrate it in one of my videos where I found this item, and so I just love this piece. I also demonstrated it on my interview with Wade at Wade's Venture, so if you want to check that video out, the link to that's down below as well in the description section. So the other cool thing about this piece is that it has this Johnny Walker Red Label pull down handle associated with it that the prior owner had put on it. Anytime you could associate an alcohol related item to your piece, that's like an advertising item, that can also help sell it. So you'll see there I strategically include that in my keywords for my title, so that could draw more people in. You see the price there, $72.50. This was really the month of the counter offer, because almost all of my items were sold through counter offers, and this was one that sold for $65. And so everyone who I wound up selling these items to initially sent me some type of respectful offer. For situations where people are not doing that and they're lowballing you, and if you're wondering should you counteroffer in every situation, the answer to that in my opinion is no. And you could check out the prior video that I did discussing that, which has gotten a lot of attention, and a lot of people enjoyed watching that prior video. So thanks for all the people who put comments onto that one. In terms of comments on this video, if people would like to share which item here that they're going to see is their favorite one, I love to hear that from you. So make sure you drop a comment down below in the comment section. Now, my tip on this one is that when I purchased this, it wasn't as shiny as you see there. You could see here it has a nice shine to it, so I like to highlight that as my first picture. So what I did is I wound up getting this product right here. It's called Brasso. If you don't have this on hand, you definitely should pick it up, because if you have any kind of brass items that have tarnish on it, this should be able to get it off and make it look much nicer, and hence much more easy to sell compared to the original state that you found it in. Now, you could find this in almost any hardware store like Ace Hardware, or you get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. But if for whatever reason you don't feel like driving out there or whatever, and you just like purchasing stuff online, I will have a link to it down in the description section. So just go down there and you'll see links to all sorts of other products that are there that help me in my reselling business. They're all Amazon affiliate links, so anything you purchase there does help support the channel, so just keep that in mind. The other thing I want to tell you about a tip, if you have metal items or brass items, is to be careful where you store them. Now I purchased this in the summertime and kept it in my garage, and there's no problem with that if it's the summertime. But what I forgot is that once it got colder out, that cold air hitting onto the brass caused some tarnish onto the item. So by the time that it's sold and I went back to grab the bell, this bell was literally brown. It did not look anything like this. So I basically told myself, uh-oh, I am going to need to either contact the buyer and let them know that the bell doesn't look the same, send them pictures and ask them if they still want it, and most likely cancel, because sending it to them in that state, there was no way I could do that, because that would guarantee get me a return and probably a negative feedback. So I want to avoid that at all costs. So you have to make sure you're communicating if you can't rehab the piece. Now, fortunately, I was able to go out, grab the Brasso. You just basically squirt a little bit on it on a paper towel, and just wipe around in a circular motion or back and forth motion, and it literally got the item to look just like this again. Took all the brown off, looked nice and shiny again, perfect. The person got the item, left me a really nice feedback. And has no idea in terms of, unless they watch this video, has no idea in terms of how I had to go resalvage that piece. So this was definitely a lifesaver. Just cost a couple of bucks, and really really worth it for you, especially if you find like musical instruments and stuff like that. Could really help polish them up, shine them up, and get them sellable. All right, let's move on to number 9. Number 9 is actually my favorite item that I'm going to show you this month, even though it's not the most profitable, but it is my favorite because it's just such a unique piece, and it's Jaws related, and I love the movie Jaws. I remember going to watch that, especially Jaws and Jaws 2 when those came out when I was a kid. So I always have good memories when I see Jaws, and obviously it's a classic movie. I know Jessie Bellflower, who's probably watching this video. What's up, Jessie? Loves Jaws and loves sharks, and she was actually looking at this item and thinking of purchasing it. So but it did sell. Again, I did look at a best offer for it and counter offered, and it wound up selling for $72.50. If you've never seen this type of item before, basically what it is, it's part of the Adar's Super Scenes series. They didn't just do Jaws, they did other ones, and you could see those on the side of the box. They also did Planet of the Apes, and that's actually the most expensive one. If you ever find that one and it's complete and in good shape, that one could sell for well over $100. But they had other scenes. They're not all movie related ones. There's several Planet of the Apes ones, as you can see there, but they also did ones that are World War I plane fights or dinosaur scenes. And basically what they are, and as you can see here, once I opened it up, you could see it's basically a kit, and you assemble the kit. So there's two sides of a plastic bottle that affix together, and inside you could see there is the shark right there. And you would of course have to paint these things, so the paint would be something you'd get separately, and it has a cage that you would assemble, and there's the diver there on the top right. And so you take this blue piece of cardboard, and that's your background scenery. And so ultimately, once you put everything together, and this also did come with instructions, which is a great selling point for me. So it shows you exactly how to put it together right there. So that's important to have that. And ultimately, once you put it together, it's going to look like this scene in the bottle right there. So really, really cool piece. Found it at an estate sale haul. It was literally at the bottom of a garbage pile, and so I'm just pulling through things. It was kind of like a hoarder house, and sure enough, this was just right there. And I just grabbed it. I looked at it. I instantly knew it was vintage. You could just tell from the look. I checked the comps, saw that it's something that would sell really well. And I was just hoping that when I opened the box, it was complete. And sure enough, it was not only complete, but it was still in the original packaging. So whoever bought it just tossed it on the bottom of this pile. And that's why I always say you have to check the bottoms of piles, because that's where a lot of the most vintage pieces are, especially if you have like a hoarder house kind of scene. Get to the bottom of those piles. You never know what you'll find there, because sometimes it's actually ironically protected by all of the garbage that's above it. Sometimes it could get in there in an air pocket or something like that, and it's in good shape. I mean, look at this. This is incredible shape for being on the bottom of a hoard of garbage. Amazing. So let's move on to another item that I found at this sale. This one was not as difficult to find. This one was sitting right on a bookshelf. This is Michael Turner's Fathom trading card series. Comes in the original binder. These are highly sought after. I have told you about the name of this artist before, Michael Turner. You should definitely jot his name down. Very famous for the Fathom comic book series, as well as another one that he did called Soulfire and some other titles. You could look him up and see some of the other things he's done. But he also did a trading card series, and he does a lot of these. He's famous basically for drawing women, bathing suits on and stuff like that. A lot of guys like to purchase these things. There's some women who are into it too, but it's mostly a guy thing. And this is the base set of 90 cards. So I pulled it off the shelf, right? I'm looking at the cards. The numbers of the cards, you could see they are in the, you probably can't see it too well here, but they're in the top right corner. There's a little square that tells you the number. So you want to make sure if you're checking comps, you look how many total cards are supposed to be there and do a count, or if they're organized like this, you could quickly tell whether they're all there. So it looked like they were all there. I grabbed it, I took it, I brought it back, and then realized that one of the cards was missing, card number 18. Now, if you know about collectors and card collectors, they don't want to buy incomplete sets. So they're not going to want to buy it with, ironically, even if you have 89 and 90 cards, they're not going to want it unless they know about what I'm going to tell you about right now, which is there are some sellers online. One that I like to use is, I'm going to give him a plug here because he's helped me out a few times in situations like this. His name is The Completist. So type that name and search for him by seller. Basically what he does is he has all sorts of card series out there, not just Michael Turner, but all sorts of ones, comic book related ones, other ones. And what he does is he has a listing of individual cards that people could purchase so that they could complete their series, and he does it for really cheap. His business model is based on volume. So I did a whole separate video on this, so I'm not going to completely redo that video here. But basically, if you didn't see that video, what he does is he'll send you out that one card for like $3 or $3.50, like total, like with the shipping. And he's just making his money on volume. And I purchased it, got card number 18. It was in mint condition. Put it right into the binder, and took a best offer into consideration. The best offer came in at $69.99. I wound up selling it meet in the middle at $79.99. So great flip right here. This item and the Jaws item, because I purchased all this stuff in a huge haul, and when you factor in how much I got everything for, I literally got these types of pieces from this sale for less than $1. So all of these are great flips because I just purchased so much stuff that I'm going to be listing for a very long time. This one here I got at a different estate sale. You might remember this. This is the set of Best Karate books. It's a complete set. There are 11 books in the series. I wound up doing a counter offer on this one and selling them for $84.99. So the best offer probably came in at $75. In fact, I think it did. And so sold it for $85. Now, again, complete set, so you'll know that when you're checking comps, you can find out how many books came in the set. This is not quite as old as the Jaws item, but it is vintage. It is from the 1980s. Anything in the 1980s you can call vintage. So it's the complete set plus another book that I threw out in there that was by the same person who they're branding this book after, which is M. Nakayama. So keep that name in mind as well. Books that have that name on it are sought after by people who are into karate. And so now, even if you though just find a few of these books, like if you found books 1 and 2 or 3 and 5, they'll still sell as well. Check the comps out on them. But when you have a complete set like this, I mean, it's an instant sale, or pretty soon you're going to sell it. Now, the thing to tell you about this in terms of a tip is that when I found them at the estate sale, if you remember that video, if you watch that one. When I found them originally and I went to count them up, I realized one of them was missing. It was like book 7 that was missing. So I went back to the original area where I found these and saw that it was off to the side. So I grabbed it, put it back in the box, and I was very happy because then I had my complete set. In terms of staging it, you see here when you only have like 11, 12 books, I suggest doing a layout so you could show all the books at once, all the covers, then do another stack on the side where you could display them this way so you get a vertical look as well. In addition to that, you could do the back covers if they're different. Sometimes people like to look at that. I won't always do that if the back covers look identical because it's kind of repetitive. And then I like to do is zoom in on individual covers like this. You can't do all 12 books because you only have 12 pictures on eBay. So you put them into smaller chunks like groups of 3, groups of 2. Sometimes I'll do groups of 4 depending, or even more. I could do groups of 5 or 6. Just depends on how many books you have in the series. Actually, you'll see that a little bit later on when I go over one of the items towards the end here. All right, so that's that item there. So let's move on to the next one here. This is Ethan Van Sciver's 2017 sketchbook. So this is a comic book related item. And as many of you know, I do specialize in comic books and comic book related material. So this would be a good example of it. Several things make this item valuable. And if you're new into comics, and frankly, even if you're into comics kind of casually, you may not know of this author, or I shouldn't say author, but artist. You may not know of this artist, Ethan Van Sciver, but he is popular especially for drawing a character that you might not have heard of before. His name is Cyberfrog, and anything that's Ethan Van Sciver and Cyberfrog related tends to sell very, very well. Now, you might know, of course, of some of the most famous comic book characters like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, but if you want to make good money reselling comics and comic book related items, you also need to know about some of the lesser known characters that do have a strong following, and so Cyberfrog is one of them. So I made sure that once I saw there was a sketch of him in here, that I definitely wanted to add that to the title because I knew that would bring in viewers. And sure enough, this literally sold at the asking price, $100 for this book, which you could see is super thin too. Sold it literally within hours. And the reason I put it at $99.99 is because the 2008 sketchbook also sold for that price. So and no one had the 2007 one up. So I said, well, that's a good place to start this one at, and started at 100. Sure enough, sold it. So very, very happy. Other things that make this one valuable is that it is a limited edition. You could see it's number 412 of 1,000. In addition to that, you could also see that it is signed and has the year on it. One thing about this saying 412 of 1,000, that literally does mean it's number 412 of 1,000. Someone asked the other day in my Facebook group, if someone says, if it says on an item that it's 1 of 1,000, does that mean it's literally number 1 of 1,000? The answer to that is no, unless it's written in fraction format, usually in marker like this, and that's very rare to find something like that. That would literally mean if it says 1 of 1,000 without it being written like this in fraction format, if it just literally says the words 1 of 1,000, that just literally means it is one item out of 1,000. So just keep that in mind when you're listing it and describing it. Okay, so now we're into the top 5 here. This one here, I love selling these. These are these Virgin Mary statues. I always say it sounds terrible, but Virgin Mary does sell a lot better than Jesus does. If you look up the price for Jesus statues and the comps on them, they usually don't move very well, but the Virgin Mary ones, they do. And what I like to do in terms of staging them as the tip is I like to stage all of my religious figures with a nature scene in the background. Now, if you went to my original picture for this, you would see that it is has a broader background to it, where you could see more of the background in it. But I like to do this. I just basically put these on my porch, and you know, I get this this view of the woods in there. And I just think that helps give it kind of more of a spiritual look to it. There are a few markings on it, as you can see here, but that's okay. I got as many of them off as I could, but you want to be careful not to damage the piece. Like you can see here, there's some brown markings on the side of it. You just want to disclose that, but for vintage pieces like this, it's not going to be something that will prevent it from selling at all. This is my biggest one I've ever sold. It's 2 feet tall. It's made of resin, which fortunately for me, that helped make it somewhat light. It is filled with sand in it. Now it's not completely filled, but it does have some sand in it. It's basically on the bottom. You could see here there's like a little spout where you would pour that stuff into it, and you could just see there's some nice you know, information that just goes to show you, kind of gives it that vintage look on the bottom as well. You could just tell with the lettering and everything that it's an old piece. This one here wound up doing a counter offer again, sold for $92.50. I sourced it for $10 at the flea market. I do have a video of me sourcing it. Now, in terms of how I actually boxed this up, a lot of people ask me about that because I featured it as a be on the lookout item of the day. This item, what I did is I put it into a vertical rectangular box. I had 2 matching ones that I was able to obtain, and so I basically put the statue, after I bubble wrapped it, into the box, and then I took the other box which was matching and slid it right over the top, and it just pressed down right into the box. I gave it a little bit of space, and then I taped it together and sent it out. Got there just fine, no problems. In terms of the shipping, you can see there I did free shipping. I do that for all of my items. Now, this one wound up going out to Washington, which unfortunately for me is pretty much the farthest it's going to go in the continental United States and wind up costing me the most money. So shipping on this was a little up there, wound up costing $30 to get this out there. Now, it wouldn't have cost as much if this was going locally, like if it was going somewhere on the East Coast. It probably would have been somewhere in the mid-teens. The shipping probably would have been half of that. But still, even when you factor in the $30 shipping and you factor in the $10 sourcing, this was actually a very easy item to pack up. Wrap it up in bubble wrap, slide it into the box, tape it up, off it goes. You know, still a nice profit on the item overall. And you know, if you compare that to, you know, selling a $10 item, you know, or selling a $20 item, making $10 profit, you know, I'd rather do this. So, you know, still is a nice return on investment. So I highly suggest looking at the Virgin Mary statues. They're just great items to resell. Someone once told me that they thought about selling this, but they felt guilty selling religious items. Absolutely, in my opinion, you should not feel guilty about making money off of religious items, because if you're very religious, just think of it this way: you're sharing some type of you know, religious item that somebody wants who is religious, and they want it. So you're giving them something that they like related to their faith, and they're willing to pay for it. And there's nothing wrong with that, so in my opinion. So moving on to the next item here. This is another comic book related item. I got it at the same place that I wound up getting the Jaws item and the Michael Turner cards. This was just laying around and I picked it up. A couple things to tell you about it. It is a graded comic book. It's Amazing Spider-Man #1. It's a newer series. It's graded there as a 9.8, which means it's near mint plus. Perfect would be a 10, but that's very hard to find anything like that. So more realistically, people are searching and trying to get a 9.8 item. Now, it is signed, and the way you know it's signed and certified signed when it's in a slab like this by CGC, which is the most well-known and popular comic book company for grading. They're a comic book grading company. They're definitely the most popular again. And when you see a yellow strip on the back like this, that means it was certified signed. So someone from CGC certified and witnessed these being signed. They were signed on different days, typically at conventions where there's a CGC representative. And that's how they wind up certifying these things, is witnessing it. So when they're signed, compared to when they are not signed, they are typically worth much more money. So if you had this same book as a 9.8 in the slab, not signed, it's not going to sell for the same price. So Now, if it wasn't damaged, and unfortunately this slab does have a little bit of damage to it, not major, but a little bit, that does take the price down. If it wasn't damaged, it would probably sell around 165. But because there was some damage on the side of it, you'll see here there's like a little notch. I'll zoom in right there. Right in the middle, there's a notch, and that's how you would open up the slab if you wanted to crack the slab open and take the comic out, which most people don't do. Remember, most people are getting these items so they're trophy pieces. And they like to display them, and that's why they want them up like that. If you crack open the slab and remove the book and then put it back in there, you voided it. Because once you take it out, it's not in its considered in its original state anymore when they originally graded it. Compared to how they originally graded it, even though it might actually be identical, but it's not considered the same anymore. So you'd literally have to get it regraded if you break it out of the slab. Now, this one item wasn't literally broken out of the slab, but someone had fooled around a little bit with this notch and had basically, looks like, tried to maybe open it a bit. And so it caused a little bit of a spacing issue there. So you could see a little opening there and a little damage to the plastic. And so someone was going to get this at a discount. I knew someone would still just want it, and just wound up selling it for for less than what it would have sold if it didn't have that damage in it. So instead of selling it for $165, it wound up selling for $100. Someone made an offer for $100. Remember, I sourced this item for less than $1. So someone offers me $100 on something I sourced for $1. As long as it's has a value somewhere around there, I'm definitely going to take it. You see there, I had it for $125. I didn't even hesitate. I just said, fine, I'll take it. And there you go. Item goes off, and now we're into our top three. Top three, religious item again. This is why I tell you, if you could not feel guilty about selling religious items, you can make a lot of money, especially in the Bible market. This item was found at an estate sale. Originally, it was sitting in a case, in a glass case. Now, by the time I got to it, and it's actually featured in one of my haul videos, it had been removed from the case, and it was just sitting there for hours. And it looks brand new, right? It looks like it was just made yesterday. But because I knew I had seen it earlier sitting in that case, I wanted to check out the year on it. And you could see here, when you look inside at the approbation, it was made in 1899. And I did research on it to confirm that this literally was made in 1899. It was. That is the publication date. It's in terrific shape. I show lots of different angles and different parts of the book, like the colored map in the background and stuff like that, and just to get a shot of what it looks like inside, so people could get all different views on it. And this one sold also for $100. Again, it's something I sourced for less than $1. So if someone's going to offer me $100 on something that's close to it, just like this one here, I'm not going to hesitate. It's just great profit. And also goes out media mail, so it's cheap to ship as well. So it's great. So always look into vintage Bibles. You want to look at what type it is. This is the Douay version. I'm not going to talk more about what that means here because I explain it a lot in my Bolo of the Day item. So go search my Facebook group, and I talk more about that there. So now we're into the top two items. Train sets, especially around the holidays. If you could find a big train set, those are really hot items, especially if it says HO scale on it. That's one of the things you definitely want to look for, HO scale. And you could see that it's here somewhere. It says HO scale. Where is it? There you go. Right there above Smoky Mountain Express, HO electric train. Bachman is a good train company, so they sell a lot of these good model sets. If you could find one that's vintage like this one that doesn't, that's not on the market, collectors will go after that. They'll pay good money for it. This one sat around for a little bit, but eventually sold for $150. This was another great piece that I sourced for very low. Wound up getting it through the person I've talked about before. on this video who worked for the Got Junk Removal Company, and he basically had all these items he pulled out of all these different estates and tossed it into a trailer, and he let me just go there and just basically clear the trailer out, and I basically loaded up my car twice again with items, and this was just one of them, and just, you know, again, really, I actually got this for like $1 when you factor in all the stuff that I wound up getting from that sale, probably even less than that. So great flip on this item as well. And that brings us to the last item, number one. Believe it or not, my number one item here is Newsweek magazines. Now, not just any Newsweek magazines. If you could find Newsweek magazines from the 1940s or other news magazines from the 1940s, and they're war-related ones, as you could see here. By the way, this is the layout that you could see I do when I have multiple either comic books or magazines or books. This is the way to display them all in like one nice shot on a table. I do recommend having a table with a leaf in the middle or 2 leaves so you could expand them outwards like this if you even have bigger lots that you want to put on there, and you know, just stand above it either on a step stool or something and take a nice overhead shot of it, and then you could break them out individually like this, and you could show people the individual titles. So you could see here I broke them out into groups of 6, and and then I took a couple pictures of the inside just to show people what the insides look, and also I wanted to feature some of the vintage ads on the back, because that's another reason people like these books, are for the vintage ads. So I tried to add in all the selling points in there as well. That's how I kind of displayed this one. In terms of the offer I took for it, you know, I was up there in terms of my my price that I put up there for it, and someone offered me something in the 200s for it, and I wound up counter offering at $277.50, and the person took in like 2 seconds. So this was just an absolutely great item to find. The funny thing about this item in terms of where I sourced it, I actually sourced it at a garage sale. And I wound up driving out about 40 minutes to it. And the reason why I drove out to it was because the person who was selling it advertised the sale as a divorce sale. She basically said in the ad that she was selling off all of her husband's Star Wars items and Star Wars toys and memorabilia. So when I see Star Wars, I jump at that, and I said, all right. She's like, it's worth the trip. So I drove out there, and I did get some Star Wars pieces, but I was surprised that it was in a nice older area, a nice older home, and there are all sorts of vintage pieces. And this was just, I wound up having to leave there after work. So I got there late in the day, and this sale had been going on since the morning. And I actually found this sitting on the porch. It was just in a box. And so I just started looking through them. I got these for $10. $10, sold it for $277.50. So that is definitely the score of the month of October. And I know this video has gone a bit long, but hopefully it's just because that's just chock full of tips and tricks, and hope you absorbed all the information from it, and that it could ultimately help you down the road. If you find anything like this, or if this video helped you in some way, please make sure you come back to it. Drop a comment down below and let me know that. I love to hear that sort of stuff. Again, if there's a favorite item that you like, make sure you let me know that as well. Come again to the Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. The link is down below. Follow me at the Primetime Treasure Instagram account. That's at prime_time_treasure. No S at the end. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here if you are not subscribed, and make sure you have in your calendars to come to the live show. It's going to be my second live show, November 7th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be a fun time. I'm going to announce my new moniker, my new name that I'm going to go by. We're still going to keep it as Primetime Treasure as the business name, but I'm going to be Dominic the Primetime. You're going to find out soon. So I'm going to let you know that. Miss Primetime will be in the live chat, so you get to interact with her. And there'll also be some other fun things along the way. So make sure you have that on your calendars, and I'll see you there. Hope you liked the video, everyone. Take care.